Hello and welcome to today's Ask an Expert interview. Joining us today from London is Rona O'Connell from StoneX Group. Rona is the head of markets analysis, EMEA and Asia at StoneX and has over 40 years of experience as a metals markets analyst. Now, also recognized as an authority in the precious metals sector, we asked Rona to join us here today to talk about not gold, as some might think, but silver. So thank you, Rona, for taking the time to be here with us today.
It's a great pleasure, Tiffany. Thank you for asking me.
All right, so we'll dive right into our first question. And as you would certainly know, an investment portfolio can contain many assets, and that does include silver. What would you say is the strategic value of holding silver in one's portfolio versus another precious metal?
I think there's probably two elements that we really need to think about here. The first is that gold is the risk mitigator in most portfolios. It's not necessarily an inflation hedge because the CHIPS index is better than that, is better for that. But because of silver's historical association with gold, and I'll come back to that in a second, then adding gold reduces volatility, and quite a lot of people think that silver would do the same thing. In fact, it doesn't, because the price is much more volatile. It's a smaller market. In terms actually of the turnover in any one year by comparison with the size of the amount of metal that is mined in any one year, silver is actually deeper than gold. But in terms of actual tonnage and, well, in terms of dollars, it's much smaller. And that feeds into additional volatility. So there's one element. The second element, then I'll pull the two together. The second element is that although historically silver was a coinage mechanism, particularly in Russia, China, and India. And a long time ago, there was a silver standard in Europe and in the United States and North America, as well as a gold standard. And that, along with its use in jewelry, has given it this connotation as a precious metal. In fact, over 60% of silver's global fabrication demand in any one year, I'm excluding investment here, just purely fabrication, that's all industrial. And when you add to that the fact that only about 23% of silver supply in any one year actually comes from primary silver mines, the majority of supply is going to keep on coming regardless, subject to, of course, to any problems you might have in copper, lead, zinc, or gold markets. So it doesn't have a classical price clearing analytical mechanism that someone like I could apply and say, well, this is the market clearing level. There isn't one. Which means that when you put those two things together, the volatility and the fact that it's got such a big byproduct component of its supply side means that if anything, putting it in there with gold as part of a portfolio actually detracts from the risk reduction that gold puts in there. If you want an aggressive portfolio, then of course people would look at silver because of its additional volatility. So there's two elements to it. In some ways it works, in other ways it doesn't.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about the characteristics and especially leading into the industrial sector, citing that over 60% of demand for silver comes from industrial applications. Now, if we look at some of the recent trends for demand for silver in that industry, which areas have you seen that have experienced the most amount of growth?
The most amount of growth over the past 2 to 3 years is the solar industry. It's all to do with moving to net zero carbon, and solar cells are a very environmentally friendly way of generating power. In fact, you've got two. You've got electric solar cells which generate power, which generate heat, and then you've got photovoltaic which generate electricity. And silver is a key component in that. By definition, people in the technological side of things are always trying to thrift the use of it because it's an expensive piece of kit. But it has the highest electrical and the highest thermal conductivity of any naturally made metal. It beats copper by a long way, for example, in terms of electrical conductivity. And therefore, from the point of view of efficiency and energy density, it's very unlikely ever to be fully substituted.
Now, Rona, how would you say the demand for silver in North America would compare to other parts of the world like Europe?
Silver has been close to the hearts of North Americans for a long time, but particularly the United States. And the primary reason for that is that when the dollar was on the gold standard, which goes all the way back to the mid-1930s, The United States government basically rendered it illegal for private investors in the States to hold gold. So, aided also and encouraged by the fact that there's a thriving silver mining industry in North America as a whole and in Mexico, there was a natural inclination to turn to silver. Over and above that, of course, particularly with the ratio between the prices of the two metals now standing at about 90-1, it's in some ways it's a more accessible metal, and also because it has that industrial side and it doesn't necessarily have the cachet that gold has with respect to central bank activity and so on and so forth. It's sometimes seen as a metal that's easier to understand. And putting all those together, that has made it something which is dear to the hearts of North American people. That said, it's very important in parts of Europe, particularly in Germany, where although it was 100 years ago, German people still have the historical memories of hyperinflation, and obviously gold played a role there, but silver also, same reasons, smaller, more accessible. It's very important in countries such as India. If one takes just the sector jewellery and silverware, then India is typically, obviously it changes every year, but it's typically responsible for between 25 and 28% globally of just that sector. And they're actually also building a huge solar industry as well. So they're going to become even more interested in silver than hitherto. But if we then break that down into grams per capita, which it's not the best bellwether, but it's a start, then looking at the 2022 numbers, because we don't have the full 23 numbers yet, in Germany, that is the highest per capita in 2022, partly driven, of course, by the Ukraine invasion. So there's a little bit of an outlier there, but generally it is a strong market. So Germany stood highest as an individual country around the globe with just over 9 grams per capita over the course of 22. The US comes in second at just over 5, and then Canada at just shy of 4. Then we drop right down, and the next one is India, and that's at 0.9. So the rest of the world is comparatively thin. So Germany, US, and Canada, and then India have the lion's share of the market in terms of per capita consumption.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of Germany, in 2023, they introduced a higher VAT, so that is a value-added tax on the sale of silver bar and coins, which seemed to lead to a decline in the demand for silver. Now, as an immediate impact, would you say that spells the end of silver investment demand in that country?
No. We have the historical throwback to inflation, as I've just mentioned, got the relationship with gold. The VAT change will ultimately become absorbed. It's like price discovery in any metal. Once a price has changed range, then almost invariably you will see a change in demand patterns, be it buying into weakness or standing back from strength. Now, over time, people get used to those new price levels and things go back to normal. But the other element here, of course, is that discretionary spending on something like silver, which could be regarded certainly in countries such as the States, Canada and Germany as a luxury, if you're thinking about jewellery or silverware, for example, then the increased cost of capital over the last 18 months or so, certainly in the States and in Europe, has meant that there's been a knock-on effect onto discretionary spending. A, because credit card rates are high, and B, because of mortgage rates. So there's been lower disposable income. Now, as the interest rate cycle changes, that seems to be a moving target and has been for quite a while. But as the cost of capital comes down again, then gold and silver and other big ticket items like cars will start to come back towards centre stage. So it's a hiccup, but it's not a disease.
Now, if we step back a little bit and come back to silver's price, what are some of the main drivers that affect the price of silver?
The gold price. And if the gold price isn't doing anything, the copper price, expectations for economic activity, and then the degree of perception of how the fundamentals of the market are changing. Now, generally speaking, I take issue with some of the other market observers here. There are some analysts who will say that silver is in a deficit. It is in a deficit if it's got reasonable investment activity, be it over-the-counter bars and coins and or exchange-traded products. But I prefer to take it back a stage and look at it in terms of overall supply against industrial fabrication demand. Then you can build in the rest of it. And supply against industrial fabrication demand is in a surplus. Now, it's in a shrinking surplus, and the numbers that I've got for this year suggest something of the order of 2.5 weeks worth of global industrial fabrication demand, which is nothing. And basically, that's in balance. So it's in a surplus. Once you've got investors coming into the market, then that will help to drive a price, and that will ultimately be the key parameter around which the market revolves.
Historically, we've noticed that the trend for silver, the price of silver increases during periods of high inflation. But in recent times, there seems to have been a downward pressure on silver's price. Why is that as inflation continues to be so high?
If gold is meandering, not doing anything particularly either in a bullish or in a bearish direction, then silver tends to turn its back on gold a little bit and tends to take its lead from copper. So what we've had over the last 2-3 years or so is widespread economic uncertainty. Now that certainly in the United States seems to be coming to an end because the US economy has been remarkably resilient and it's confounded an awful lot of economists' forecasts over the past 15 months or so. But we've got big problems in Europe. China in particular, and China's the world's largest consumer of just about any individual metal. They're walking on eggshells as well. So while you've got good demand from the United States and reasonable demand from the other two, the market's concerned about growth levels in the short term, not the longer term, because we've got the solar industry coming to the rescue. So that's the predominant reason why it's underperformed. You need gold to be in a bullish trend and an established one for silver to start to outperform. And the gold-silver ratio is a classic case in point. It's been widening a lot over the past 8 or 9, 10 months or so when gold hadn't been doing very much. And it's only over the last 2 or 3 months when gold has woken up that silver has woken up as well. And even then it took a little bit of time. And the rally at the start of March, for example, when we had some, I was going to say weak, but let's say less strong economic numbers coming from the United States than the markets were expecting, that was what drove gold up to recent nominal highs. And it took a couple of days for silver to say, okay, I'm going to join this party as well. It didn't really want to know because of the economic uncertainty elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of investors, anyone who's new to investing with silver, what would you say are some of the factors that they should consider?
I would urge a degree of caution in that if someone's already made the decision that they want to invest in silver, then it's very important to bear in mind the volatility that we've been talking about. I've thought of it for many years as the Cinderella metal, in the sense that rather like Cinderella, it doesn't do anything for quite a long time. It'll be there in the background, rather like Cinderella down in the kitchens working for her ugly sisters. But then, when she does come to the ball, she turns up looking beautiful. She takes everyone's breath away. She captures the imagination, and everyone's entranced by her. But when she goes at midnight, she goes like that. And the silver price can do almost exactly the same. I've seen it so many times when people get drawn in by the euphoria of it, and then when it turns, at the risk of coining a pun, it turns on a sixpence, and it can come back down much faster than it goes up.
Well, it certainly sounds like there's more to silver's story to uncover, but sadly, that's all the time we have for today's interview, Ask an Expert interview. So I want to thank you, Rona, very much for your time and for your insights on this topic today, which is silver.
It's a great pleasure, Tiffany. I have to say thank you for inviting me.
And to our viewers, it's important to highlight here that if you are considering silver as an investment, then it is advisable to speak to a financial advisor in advance. And for anyone who wants to learn more about StoneX and what they do and have to offer, I encourage you to visit their website at www.stonex.com.